things which I can never do, God can do. Let's keep that in mind this morning. God can do things that the world says is impossible. Sometime back, one of my mentors or spiritual mentors told me, you must read this book called My Habits and Me. So I read this book called My Habits and Me. So 75% of today's message is on why is it that we fall into habits, and why is it we find it so difficult to come out of habits. And as you understand the science of this, also all the young people, can you stop whatever you're doing? I want you to focus on this. This is a very, very, very important lesson that I'm going to take you through. There's a lot of science, and to understand this morning, this can only be broken by Jesus Christ. Counseling may not help you in most of the times, and that's why people even try medication to bring you out. The first thing I just asked this morning is what you see in your screen. What exactly is in your mind? Do you know? What's in your mind very often is connected in some ways to your habit. What's in your mind the whole day? If you seek God and His righteousness, godliness will occupy your mind most of the time. This actually is called a cloud. How do you generate this cloud? It's very easy. If one day we can do this, it's basically run on a app called the Mentimeter. You log on to the website, and when we put a question, the people, as they type the words, the word that's repeated most often becomes larger and larger. So finally, when we talk to a lot of people, they say, what's on my mind, finally in some way, is my habit. A person who's addicted to drug, all through the day, if you find what's in your mind, finally the largest portion of his life is basically stuck on, when can I get my next shot? How can I get it? How can I source it? For him, whose biggest problem in life is probably, if it's pornography, he'll find that all through the day, when he thinks the largest component becomes one of this. So basically, this is the problem. So, the one thing, if I had to ask you all today, what exactly is a habit? You may have many ways to define it, but the actual definition of a habit is this: a settled or a regular tendency or practice that what is hard to give up. Something that has become a routine in your life. And you find it very, very difficult to give this up. And you call it a habit. And habits can be of many types. For example, a very classical habit. Somebody is nervous, starts biting the nail, right? So something you frequently and automatically do in response to an environment. So habits have got two things. Something can trigger something and you get back in a habit. For somebody who's depressed, sometimes it's overeating. They go ransack the fridge, they're upset, they're angry, they're depressed. For somebody, when it's loneliness, it's drinking. For somebody else, it could be that I am a bit stressed up, it's smoking. For somebody, it could be something as simple as I sit in front of the TV, I stop snacking, So, if you look at it, habits can be so many. From shopping to getting stuck to watching TV, but also to good things. You may always take the stairs. You may do your morning walks. You may eat healthy food. All of them are habits. But the challenge today is, why does it make it so difficult, or why is it so difficult to build good habits? It's very strange. Do you know the word? You build good habits, but you dash into bad habits. How do you complete the sentence? You build good habits, but you dash into bad habits. You fall. What is easier? Falling, For some reason, bad habits are very easy. And good habits can be always challenging and difficult to achieve. So somebody says it so well. It says bad habits are like a comfortable bed, easy to get into, but very hard to get out. The best thing in your life is if you don't discover that bed at all. Honestly. When we tell young people, don't start smoking, it can be very difficult to get out. They find it very funny, It's so cool. Because all the macho-looking men smoke, which is a lie. They don't do that, but they do that maybe in advertisements. Or waking up late, for example, There's hardly a young person I see who goes to bed early and wakes up early. Most of them sleep between 1 to 2 o'clock. What's the average time you sleep the night? 12? Okay. Most of the young people, if I ask, that's your time. And whereas, what time do you wake up? Given a chance, they can wake up at 12 in the noon also, Now, bad habits are like that comfortable bed. But the truth is, you wake up early. God has done some amazing things. The highest number of vitamin D conversion in your body takes up in the early morning light, where the latitude is very different. And if you walk at that time, your serotonin levels go up. Your body starts preparing for a day that lies ahead. And if you learn to worship and praise and walk and pray, just imagine you can do such amazing things, but somehow that doesn't happen, right? So in the end, we are stuck with habits which you don't seem to ever release. So today we're going to ask, can we give up our old habits this morning? And can we start new habits? And is it truly possible? Why is it Christians who say they are believers, who say they have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, yet are in bad habits? And the church is a dangerous place to open up and tell the truth, because you can get condemned. I always say the biggest problem in churches are like hospitals where they expect only healthy people to come in. What would you call such a hospital where you treat only healthy people? You'd call it a business center where they're cheating people. Today, if you got somebody who comes and says in the stage, I want to tell you that I've been struggling with this sin. And everybody looks at him, oh really, and what is that skin? Oh, it's just, no testimonies out here of those stories. I'm struggling with pornography. I'm struggling with sexual fantasies. I'm struggling with a drug problem. I'm struggling with severe inferiority complexes, and because of that, I have slowly becoming immoral to get popular. Then you say, I'll pray for you. And the second week, he says the same story. And the third week, you say, can we get this guy out of the church because he's not good for us? These are no longer hospitals. We love testimonies of people who look very good. They come with their halos around and they look very pious and they got the right look and their clothing is right. Just recently, there was somebody who came to the hospital and said, I just came to meet you because I heard so much about you and I heard so much about your teaching and preaching. And I said, that's the easiest thing any Christian can do. It's so easy because I can be a whitewashed tomb. Under the tomb is filth which nobody can see, only God and you know. And this morning, as we are saying, God, search my heart, we're saying, God, you know that filth in me. I can pretend, I can speak the right words, I can externally look right, and everything looks perfect, but God, I have a problem, and I don't know how to even share it to anybody. But today, I just want to tell you that in Christ, God can set us free. So this is a book I read. Even as I tell, if you Charles Duhigg is not a believer or a Christian, he was a journalist. He did a tremendous amount of work. He tried to understand, why do habits develop? It was a path-breaking book. And I want you to understand, beyond the Bible, do read some other books also which can change you. And this is a great book for you to read. Now, what he finally came to a conclusion was this. For any habit to form, there is a cue, routine, and a reward cycle which finally gives a craving. So what's a cue? Cue is an environment. Let me put a very small, simple cue. You come back from work, you sit down in front of the TV, You take the remote in your hand, and immediately there are friends of mine who like to have a drink. They just cannot do it without it. So every evening they have a couple of drinks watching TV. For somebody else, they come in the front of the TV, they switch on, and promptly they feel that they should actually start eating some snacks which they know are really bad for them. Just to give you. So what happens is the cue gives you, you start the routine. But why does a routine become a routine in your life? It becomes this because of this one thing which is called the reward. Unless there is a reward in your body, you will never ever make it a routine. For example, you come in front of the TV's house, you sit on the TV, you put on the remote, and promptly get an electric shock. After the second day, you will never put on the remote again, right? It's not a reward. It's a painful memory that whenever you switch on the remote, you're going to. That's why, people thought that, you sort of punish the kids and they don't do the wrong things. But today you realize you reward children, it does much better than punishing them. So what happened? There is a cycle which produces a craving. The craving is not actually for that food, it is for that reward. Your body craves for that reward. And I'll go a little more into detail about this reward cycle. Okay? To understand this, in the early 1900s, nobody in the world used to brush their teeth. It's a fact. Which has become such a great routine. I want you to understand how did this become such a big habit that people now brush their teeth twice. There is a friend of mine who used to brush my teeth thrice a day. So one day in 1900, a prominent American businessman named Claude Hopkins was approached by a friend of his. He had created a creation which he called toothpaste. So far people had tried these kind of stuff, never used to sell. Dental hygiene was horrible. People's teeth was falling off. At least the dentists here are happy. We got a topic for them, Okay. And so this guy comes up with a product which he calls Pepsodent. He said, look, this is an astounding product I got. It really makes your teeth feel as though film has come off. Pepsodent had a very interesting combination of stuff. It had mint in it. It had lime-like flavor into it. It was frothy. And he promised that this was going to be a great product. And it was a revolutionary advertising campaign that was done by this man called Claude. Right? And he never understood why it was selling. But he knew that it was crazy. This was the man, he's considered a father of advertising. He says you cannot go after thousands of men until we learn how to win one person. Remember this? Very scriptural. You want to reach out to the millions, you start with one person at a time. And he said if you learn how to reach one individual at a time, you can reach everybody in this world, right? So Claude C. Hopkins' work, which is more than 130 years old, is still considered as scientific advertising. And I've just put this Claude C. Hopkins, Master of Marketing Secrets, from the first great copywriter. He was the world's father of advertising. Now what happened over here is very, very interesting. America starts brushing. His greatest contribution in the world was, in a matter of 10 years, the whole of the world, at least the developed world, started brushing their teeth with toothpaste. Something that never happened. And so it became so popular, they used to call it the Pepsodent smile. So what did he write? He wrote that, the whitest of the tooth, the brightest of the tooth is possible with new Pepsodent. And he thought it is because of some chemical called Erianium that they had inside that. Now, Hopkins did not know that what he had actually touched upon was a neurological phenomenon that creates a habit in people's lives. Hopkins created, how did he create it? By identifying a simple cue that created a reward. And it created a craving. And I'll tell you exactly what it was. You wake up in the morning your mouth kind of feels not at all fresh. Peppermint and menthol has a funny thing. It makes your mouth hypersensitive. So sensitive that there's a tingling sensation inside the gums and the mouth. And you take that little breath of air, it all starts tingling and your mouth starts feeling fresh. That was the reward. And soon it became a craving in people, and nobody could imagine a morning without that sensation. And you feel a little funny in the mouth, brush your teeth. Imagine selling toothpaste without mint. It will never sell. If toothpaste did not have that kind of an effect. So people actually was trying to use soap for brushing their teeth before. It never sold because it never felt clean at the end of it. And the clean feeling that you get, actually there are many people who feel that even just like, even mouthwash itself is good enough to keep. Animals don't brush their teeth. I know dentists won't agree to this, but they don't have caries, So do we have to brush our teeth at all? But the fact is, brushing your teeth definitely gives a fresh odor to your mouth. It definitely prevents a lot of the fluoride does help in many ways, but the habit came because of that. But Claude never knew that. He never knew it was a sensation that was making people buy. He thought it was his advertisement which kept telling over and over again, you have a film on the teeth, you use Pepsodent, that film comes up and you get sparkling teeth. But he also, somewhere down the line, was understanding that there was something beyond it. The way this toothpaste was selling was something that he nor the developer of Pepsodent ever thought in his life. And these are the ads that were coming. They were talking about soldiers whose teeth were the worst in the world. They were having better teeth. Movie stars were having better teeth. Pepsodent makes your teeth brighter, brighter, brighter was the game. But actually the truth was, it was because of something else. And like I kept saying, this ads used to run about every group. And it kept telling people. But he says that was not the full explanation why Pepsodent was a success. There was another rule that even Hopkins at that time did not understand. And let us go a little more into detail. Why does things become habits in our life? Why is the human body created in such a way that it can be so challenging to give up a habit that's once developed? To understand that, you must understand this experiment which was conducted by a German scientist in the University of Cambridge with his little chimpanzee called Julio. Now what was happening in Julio's life was this. Julio was a monkey. He was placed in a dark room. There was this computer over there which some bright looking pictures would come. Whenever the bright picture would come, Julio would touch a button and sweet juice would flow into his mouth. Very soon Julio got excited. He immediately understands whenever he sees that stuff he presses, he's going to get something nice. Then one day, they stopped giving juice when that red button was touched. And Julio would go crazy. Julio had developed a habit which was now giving him withdrawal when he didn't get the pleasure of the juice. What exactly was this doing to your brain? So this exactly was happening in his brain. They put electrodes in his brain and they found whenever he saw a shape, he touches a lever, he gets a juice, drinks the juice, and there was this big spike in his brain. The spike is crossed by a chemical called dopamine. So this dopamine spike would come up after he drank the juice. Couple of months down the line, they started seeing a complete change happening in the secretion of dopamine. He would see the shape and the dopamine will start secreting. By the time he pressed the lever, his body was prepared to get that juice. And now with the dopamine surge, without the juice, he would go crazy. This is what habits does to you, right? So now you see what is happening. The Julio did not have to touch the liver to get the change. All he had to do was see those images. And the craving would drive him crazy. So now he would get very angry. His mood will get totally spoiled because he could not get what his brain had wanted. And this is the problem of habit. That's why we get so upset. I can't break this habit. Because the problem is, you do understand, to break the habit, you have to break the cue. Like for example, this person is so upset, he's snacking so much. The cue is when he sits in front and picks up the remote, the body has already put the dopamine running up his brain. And now if he doesn't get the snack, he'll get upset. He'll scream at his wife, because at the right time he says, "Is there any chips at home?" She said, "I forgot." And he's upset. He's so angry. He says, "How can you even forget these small things? There is one small thing that gives me pleasure in my life and you don't have it." The problem is he's helplessly addicted to the dopamine rush. How do you understand these problems today? Just today when I was walking down, I saw that Bombay Circus advertisement running, Today, do any kids are interested in circus? No. They're not interested in circuses anymore because their brain has been used to a much higher level of dopamine playing computer games. And that is so high that the circus looks so boring that you cannot keep them entertained anymore. So when Julio saw that cue, he started anticipating the juice, but the juice didn't arrive. A craving, when unsatisfied, drove him to anger or depression. This is so crazy. God created many, many things for us for our pleasure. God had created this dopamine to come for many good things in our life. Playing sports, playing games, winning, a husband and wife in a sexual and a romantic relationship. All of them. But Satan would primarily bring things also by the side to give. And so some of the things that bring the highest amount of dopamine today is gambling, drugs, and sex. And that's why you find people addicted to these three more than anything else in their life. So what was the thing about Pepsodent? I told you about this. Unlike other toothpaste, Pepsodent's inventor did not realize that the reward they got was an amazing, tingling, fresh feeling that actually internally gave them a pleasure that they didn't understand. And that was the why it was selling, and not because of his ad that was going over and over again. So he wasn't selling beautiful teeth. He was actually selling the sensation that mint was producing. He never understood it. It took close to 100 years for people to understand what made toothpaste finally a kind of a habit that people could never give. So we talked about this craving reward, and here we saw the routine came. So basically in life, if you can identify the right cue and the reward, and you can sense a craving, you can establish any habit in your life. And that's why today they understand for children, give them a reward. When the child does well, give him a reward. When he does his homework, give him a reward. When he gets his sums right, give him a reward. That is a much better way of getting a guy to do things, because that actually gives him a chemical response that is good rather than always punishing them. So they, instead of actually doing well, they start hating studies. For them, studies is associated with pain, with suffering, with pinching, with whacking, and all those things which are actually not pleasant in any form. So imagine the circle. Every time, wow, you did well. Let's do something better. Let's do things for you. You'll change. You'll start enjoying your studies. Because for you, then study is something that is associated with the reward. And it's a science. And the places where kids have done the best are places not that were punished, but where kids were recognized for their talents and made to feel special whenever they did that. You can see that even in an animal, or they would something, when they train dogs, they'll give him something good, but for somewhere. So to make you understand, the problem is this. This goes into your mouth and gives you a pleasure that is unbelievable. So the cue is what? Sit in front of the TV, take the remote, and I need this by my side because this will give me some experience which is unbelievable. So the cue here is the remote. So you're upset with yourself. God, I have to stop this habit. You can never stop the habit till you take the remote from his hand. So the idea is, take the remote away, the routine goes up, and this will go up, and the reward that you have, which you love. So, sometimes industries use it very well. One of the people who used this very, very well was McDonald's, and I'll talk about that. So this is trying to say the habit loop. to make you even understand why does a rat get caught in a trap, Because the reward cycle in your brain is, so it says, the routine is physical, mental, emotional behavior that follows a cue. And a reward is a positive stimulus that tells your brain this is a feel-good factor in your life. So let me tell you another beautiful example and a beautiful story. Now, Procter & Gamble is a company that is to make a lot of innovative products. So they decided to make something that will deodorize and take off odor completely. So they found a thing, actually basically they found that these are carbohydrate particles that come up into the air, which actually can make a place smell really bad. So they decided to go to a lady's house who had 40 cats. And the house used to really, really stink. So they took this amazing product of theirs, sprayed it all over the place. Within 10 minutes, the house was odorless. And the people who went from Procter & Gamble realized that it was odorless. But the lady could experience no difference. What did they realize? The problem was the bad smell can sometimes become, you can become so comfortable with it that you don't even realize there is a bad smell. For example, if you live near a tannery, the local people, they don't feel it stinking. Only when you go, it'll stink. For all of us who did medicine, the first few days when we go to the anatomy dissection hall, horrible. The smell of formalin in the dead body is a funny smell. Very soon we used to get used to it. We never realized we were stinking so badly when we came back. But later on, when we came into first clinical year, those guys said, hey, take off your aprons when you guys are stinking so badly, Because you carry that smell and come, and somebody else. So they realized there was no reward in this. Great habit, taking your smell, but since there was no reward, it was not selling. So the problem was the human smelling system can accommodate any smell after some time. So they added a fragrance. Suddenly, this product would sell like crazy and became the world's most popular deodorant. In other words, what I'm trying to say, you may tell about habits, you may tell all kind of things, but unless and until the body experiences a reward, it can never be accepted as a habit. And that's one reason. So they realized once that lady got a fragrant, fresh, orange smell coming in that house full of cats, she said, I can smell a beautiful fragrance. This happens in our life. Sometimes we are so stuck with a habit, a personality trait, maybe something that we don't realize. Somebody outside has to not only tell us, help us to bring something perfect. So this is the problem that we see. What gives me pleasure is not finally the sweet in the chocolates, the chemical in the drug, nor the potato chips. Everything is linked to one chemical in your brain, which is called dopamine. And dopamine is an exceptionally dangerous thing when it is given to you for the wrong reasons. It is one thing that your body will crave over and over and over, and without it, you go into depression. Okay? So it is released for many things. It is released in many things like food, drugs, like I said, gambling, and also for good things. It produces exercise. It produces that you win. It produces when you excel in your studies. But the levels that it generates can never match up with sinful things. So in other words, sin is always associated with a much higher dopamine release than things that are good and healthy because we compete. And this is, of course, you don't need to know it, just to make you understand how when something starts, it starts on the outer part of the brain and slowly it goes to the innermost part of the brain called the limbic system, and then it is so challenging to take it unless and until something extraordinary happens in your life, which I'll talk a little later. When you drink a coffee, when you receive a text message, that bing sound, dopamine is being released. It tends to make people more talkative, more excitable, and wanting more. So have you seen that problem? Your phone makes a bing, You have to see that message because the dopamine is already released. Often young people, kids, gossiping, but they need to see that phone because without it, they can't be satisfied. And the parents are so agitated. What is there in that phone that is so important? Why are they sitting over there and looking at the phone when they're having dinner together in a restaurant or wherever? Because the dopamine response, the environment. You're sitting over there, the phone in your hand, you have to see it. You have to see it because the dopamine high drives you to look at things. Makes no sense. You're looking at the likes that you get on your Instagram page. It gives a dopamine high. And without it, you can't survive. And today you do not even know why. But you have to have, people get more stressed up in losing their phones than losing any other object in life. Recently, somebody called me up and said, I lost my phone. Can you talk to the commissioner? No. When I said, is it an iPhone or something? iPhone 14, 15? No, it's just one Chinese phone, 10,000 rupees. I told him it was much easier buy you one of those phones than trying the police department. No, but there are so many things in that phone and his heart is breaking. 10 minutes without the phone is like, he's not bothered if his wife is lost, his kids is lost, but his phone is lost, everything is lost, Why does that happen? Because deep down, one of the highest stimulus of dopamine is coming from your phone. And you cannot they say that's why one of the ways of fasting is fasting from your phone. 1 day, 2 day, a day, because you become a dopamine addict and there is no way that you can get out of this. So what are the triggers? This is what companies do. Suddenly an ad pops up. You were into pornography in the past. You see this, you can't help it. The dopamine stimulus has already taken place. You have to do it, otherwise you're go mad. You're helpless, and companies do that. So right in your email, on your web page, these pop-up will come, and if you're never into it, you just brush it aside. But we are always into it, sees it, dopamine is released, you got to do it now. And more than that, do you know a company called McDonald's? Every single place, they realize when they have that huge thing with that M sign on red, it triggers a dopamine response. What sells in McD's most is, the chips. They realized that produces the highest dopamine response. It was actually, I don't know what they use for frying. Initially, it was fried with animal fat. And they used to put salt. And the combination of that, they realize, as it touches your tongue, releases a dopamine response. And the whole place is red and yellow, red and yellow, red and yellow. So whenever you travel on the highway, you see the red and yellow, let's go and eat something. Not because you're hungry, because suddenly the dopamine response comes in. Your body is craving for having that when you don't even need it. Same thing started happening with Coke and the caffeine kick that it should give. So they started finding that's why it's very, very good to have that kind of a product that makes you remind you of this experience. So McDonald's was the first people in the world who discovered the science of how they can destroy you completely by making you release dopamine even before you wanted or decided to eat. Of course, that's why you find that so many, many big brands have a similar looking shop in every form, not because they want to keep similarity, it's because they want to give you a craving. Now you can understand why you fall into sin. A group of friends, you're together, and then you feel you should drink. Because the environment is a reminder of a cue that tells you, just like that chimpanzee story. When the colors came, the dopamine was released. So you're with your friends, the dopamine is released. And now, if somebody says, I forgot to get the alcohol, they are very agitated about it. Same thing, maybe your boredom when you want to smoke, or the smell of smoke, or whatever it is. And same thing with depression, when you want to take drugs or alcohol, when you feel low, when you feel rejected, when you feel you don't have friends, when you feel your mother scolded you, or whatever it is, all of these become. And this itself can be a dopamine reward. I am successful, let me blow something, let me do something, it can be. But in today's world, the biggest addiction is the sound of your phone. So one of the good things is to keep your sounds nil. It actually helps a lot and is scientifically proved to help. The big sound is just like the response of Julio's colors. Immediately the sound comes and you have to see the phone. Some stupid advertisement may be there, but you still got to see it because somewhere down the line, your body is dying. So exactly this is what happens. The first few days, you would pick up your phone when the sound came, and then there was a dopamine release. But today your problem is, as soon as the sound rings, you release and you have to see it. You don't need the message to release it. The sound releases it. And later on, looking at the phone releases it. And there is no way of getting out in whatever you have. And that's why Paul will say, the things I want to do, I cannot do. I cannot do because I'm helpless as I go in this journey. The anticipation of the reward, a win, triggers the dopamine, and I will do all kind of things. The most intelligent people text while driving the phone. I used to do that too. I'll always say it's a hospital stuff. Now I stopped doing it. I do it on traffic lights. Even that irritates my wife enormously, And the fact is that, but actually for me sometimes it is necessary because there's something about a stroke or a call. But having said that, I find a lot of people doing for useless, the most useless thing in life. Sometimes I'm shocked to see young people, phone is buzzing, they're going out and taking that call. For what? What can you guys have? An emergency in your life? I can't even understand what you're running out for. Talking, looking, texting inside the church, texting inside class, And look at this. The biggest problem of this chemical is this: a person will act in what they think is their best interest, when in fact the only interest is release of dopamine. They start thinking, I have to make time for this. This is good for me. I have to make time for this. Actually, when I play computer games, it's good for me. Actually, my hand-eye coordination improve. I can justify the story. Like I justify it, to my wife. I'm a doctor. I need to text. I can justify the story. I can talk about, in the morning, my breakfast is very different. I don't have the time, so actually I make a smoothie. You basically like the sweet and the cream and all that, and the fruits also are there. But you're eating a lot of junk because basically you don't have time. Not that. Basically enjoy the taste or whatever it is, trying to make you understand that in the end of the day, you can justify your means because the craving can become so high. Look at this. Intelligent people end up in this situation. They can't find an answer to this. They don't know where they are going wrong. But the problem is that you justify so many things. So remember, God has created our bodies to be controlled by two chemicals called serotonin and dopamine. It is not satanic. Understand? God created your human body this way. God created typically that I am happy with both these chemicals. So for both of us to be happy, so basically understand serotonin is the neurotransmitter that makes me feel good. It makes me feel happy. It gives me a good mood. It calms. It takes away depression. And do you know that that's where women sometimes have greater challenges? In a menstrual cycle, when the estrogen levels are low, the serotonin level is low. And husbands should always be understanding of this. But serotonin comes normally good if you eat healthy food. Vegetables in your diet, nuts in your diet, fresh fish and meat in your diet, all help serotonin. Serotonin also comes better when you wake up early morning. You start waking up 12 o'clock, you'll find that your serotonin level already dropped heavily. So look in the life of anybody, kids who wake up at 11, 12, 10, all these are always perpetually depressed. Kids who wake up at 5 o'clock and they exercise. Exercise is a good form of serotonin. Working is a good form of serotonin in the garden. Unfortunately, we lock ourselves in closed rooms. God had created us to be tillers and hunters and people who really worked well. Unfortunately, we created an environment where there's artificial light. Sunlight is a great source of serotonin. It builds up serotonin. So God created us. And as you work, dopamine goes up. Success gives you dopamine. As you see a garden growing and beautiful flowers coming, it gives you dopamine. As you see your children doing well, it gives you dopamine. The Bible tells you, your children will be like olive shoots round your table. This gives you dopamine, In the end of the day, what God created to be made perfect was destroyed by us. It's like 2 glasses of milk. An ideal body should have half of dopamine and half of serotonin. If you have too much of dopamine and low of serotonin, you become a psychopath and a killer. You're crazy. You're a total junkie. You're an addict whose life is so terrible that nothing gives you pleasure. Sitting in church, your mind is totally away because it doesn't give you pleasure anymore. Whereas too much of serotonin, you are so happy you do nothing in life, that Buddha-like attitude. I have reached nirvana. I don't want to do any work, don't want to do anything. This is my life, only serotonin. Both are useless in life. So like I said, low dopamine people, zero in motivation, and it comes. So now let's come back to this truth. Why is breaking a bad habit so hard? The biggest problem is our brains are biased on past rewards. What does that mean? I learned cycling when I was the age of 5. I cycled for 1 or 2 years. At the age of 70, somebody gives me a cycle, I can start cycling all over again. You don't need to learn it again. Isn't it true? It's not a problem at all. Get on the cycle and start cycling. The biggest problem is also this. The same thing habits. So once I have a dopamine surge in my mind, the mind remembers that surge forever. It'll never go. So once you have tasted pornography, though you have come out, remember one thing, they go back to it very often. The alcoholic will go through a big rehab course, 2 years later back to alcohol. Because he's sitting in a group, the same cue, the reminder comes back, hey, you're missing something in life. So unless that cue is completely taken out, so it just cannot happen. Just recently I was talking to Vimla about a friend of ours and I was saying, he got into some bad habit because he was alone. And today the church has condemned him and put him in a corner where he's even more lonely. And I was saying, Vimla, this is worse because the chances of him falling back is much higher. So in other words, you understand, unless somebody understands, the cue should be taken out. For example, if you find this guy was getting into pornography whenever he is alone, it's more important that he's not lonely. That he's always with friends. He's always with somebody else. Or for example, for any habit, unless you find the cue and you work out with that, you can find it very, very challenging. And that's why it's a duty of the church. So the best way you can change it is doing this. Substitute your bad habit. Identify the routine. Experiment with the rewards. Now, if you think that eating junk food is happening every afternoon, now you replace it. Get something better. Sit with a couple of friends but eat an apple, where you got happy to be with your friends and you're having an apple instead of junk food, and it starts helping you because now you replaced it. So unless you replace it with things that God wants you to do, you will find it a big challenge. You're bored. Every afternoon you go for lunch. Today you're going nothing and saying, I'm fasting. It's not going to work. You've got to replace it with something that is edifying. Something. So he said, okay, I'm going to have a Bible study group, and at that time we're going to sit and talk and chat. Now this gives me some pleasure, and slowly I find I can get out of this habit of eating snacks. These are, of course, experimentally. I'm just not going to talk about this. And it tells you, I'm just going to move. I just want to come to this. What God wants from you in different situations in your habit. It says, if you plant the right seed in the right spot, it will grow without further coaxing. I believe this in the best metaphor for creating habit. Ask yourself, God, give me the wisdom to understand. So the first thing you ask God for wisdom. God, give me the wisdom. Where is my cue? That is the starting point. Is loneliness my cue? Is reading a kind of book my cue? Is browsing on the net my cue? Is it the long hour I take of driving on the car my cue? Is it an argument that my wife starts or husband starts my cue? And once you get the cue, it may be a great idea to talk and say how this is working. And thus ask God wisdom how you can actually become a difficult cue can become difficult. I just want to show you some experiments in the world, but I want to tell you with all this, what you need is God. And that's why I said today, we sang over and over about a God who can make the impossible possible. As you go through this, have you understood how impossible it is to get out of a bad habit? Because your whole brain is geared towards that habit that you started loving because of the dopamine high. One of the ways they should do with working with this man, this is this phenomenal swimmer. Anybody can recognize him? Michael Parks. Now this guy, they used to put one music onto his ear every time. And they saw the sound of applause, of thousands of people clapping. This is the only thing you'd hear. And they made him understand that this is what you will receive when you win a race. So he could completely go blind and run the race because this is all he would hear. He was a person who was socially disabled. Left alone, he would have probably become a criminal. But they could turn him around, and one day when he was down that, even when his glasses fogged, it didn't make a difference for him. So one of the things is start meditating on things that can make you. For example, this one of the things they say, you're looking fat, put a picture of this girl in your mirror or in your bathroom, keep looking. Get excited as you see and say, I'm going to look like her. I'm going to look like her. And slowly that dopamine will come. And so when you eat, you're understanding, hey, this eating thing is going to take me away. I'm going to look like her, Which scientifically proven. Even better, if you think your nature is not good, look at Mother Teresa and say, God, I want to be like her. And start finding the joy filling your heart as you imagine that you're her. See, what is happening? You've got to start imagining that you're like her. How much more better if you can bring Jesus into the picture and keep saying, I want to be like him. I want to be like Jesus. And I want to be like Jesus. And slowly you find that thing that this itself starts giving you. Today I want to share with us, I want to make you understand that getting out of a habit that you're in is the most challenging thing on the world. And that's why Jesus says, come unto me, all who are weary and you're burdened, and I will give you rest. I would be surprised if there's one person here says, I don't have a habit that I want to break. It becomes a burden. Nobody in the world can tell you this truth. That Jesus says, come unto me, all who are weary. I'm tired of God. I've been trying to get rid of this habit, but it's not happening. God, I want to wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock and spend time and pray and worship. It's not happening. God, I'm weary, Father. I wake up late. I'm hurried. I don't have time for you. I'm messing up, oh God. And Lord, I need a transformation to come. I want to be like you. And ask God and ask God to take this from you. This is what Paul says, what a wretched man am I. Who can rescue from this body that is subject? How can I escape this, oh God? How can I escape? Because I keep falling onto the same thing over and over again. And I want you to understand, you'll keep falling over and over again unless God erases the memory of that which gave you the dopamine rush. You have to forget that. God can do it. You can't do it. However hard you try, you can never do that. That's why winners keep winning, because they're used to this. The one who's a topper keeps topping because he cannot come for anything less than this, right? And then it says in Acts, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. You need the Holy Spirit to come upon you, that therefore if anyone is in Christ, is a new creation and the old has gone. And this is the message. You can never ever break these habits unless you're a new creation. Because your body is wired in a way that you will always go back to that gave you that great pleasure. Sin in every form gives us pleasure. In every form. Laziness gives us pleasure. Bad habits gives us pleasure. Smoking, alcoholism, gaming, addictions, even gossiping gives you pleasure. And the problem is, unless you and I receive the mind of Christ, there is no way that you can escape this. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. But Christ lives in me. The life that I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me. And he gave himself for me. Do you understand this truth this morning? To change and break from a habit, Ask God for wisdom. It's just not praying and saying, God, let the Holy Spirit come. God, give me understanding about these areas of the cue, the starting point. The start that I may completely avoid it. Lead me not into temptation. And ask God for the power to come upon you that we become a new creation. Without that, it is not possible for us to give up these habits. Never. You'll keep falling into it over and over and over again. Ask God, when this is the trigger point. If your wife or your husband is the cause of a trigger point, it's good to sit and talk and say, there's a problem. When you get angry with me, I get depressed. When I get depressed, I start eating more and more. I start drinking. I do abusive things. I start doing some things which are totally wrong. And I want you to partner with me in this. That does not happen. Ask God for wisdom, for transformation in your life. But most of all, ask God, can it be possible that I want you to understand, nobody can crucify you. You can't crucify yourself. You can only ask God to crucify you and ask God to crucify you. There's no man who can nail his legs and hands or tie his legs and hands on the cross. That's a mistake we make. We try to say, God, just say, God, I surrender. That last song we sang today was that, God, I want to surrender. You crucify me. Take, Lord Jesus, all of man. That's why the Bible talks about the old man. The old man has got memories of every sin etched into your brain so deeply that when the cue comes, you start it all over again. All over again. One thing, and you're back to square one. For some people, it's the weather, or it's raining, so let me get drunk, or whatever it is, I don't know. For some people, it could be anything else, I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because the truth is, in Jesus Christ, we are meant to be a new creation. And in Jesus Christ, we get the mind of Christ. That mind has no memories of the past. I want you to close your eyes. I know everyone here is struggling in some area. I want you to understand that how much of you fight physically, mentally, you'll never win this battle. The only way you can win this battle is through Jesus Christ. It is not possible. You condemn yourself over and over again. You think you have failed. It's not that you have failed. Your brain has been wired in a way that these responses will cause you to fail. Unless and until God makes you into a new creation. I'm going to ask Monsi to come over. I want you to say, God, I've tried. I'm giving up, oh God, today. I can't do it anymore. Thank you, Lord, for showing me, God, that which you had created me for pleasure in God. I sold myself, Lord, to sinful pleasures. But today I believe, oh God, that you called me this morning to tell me that in my helplessness, oh God, you'll bring healing and restoration. Today, God, I want to walk out this place as a new creation. Today, I want to walk out this place, God, where my mind is the mind of Christ. Lord, I do not want to take back the memory of any of my dopamine surges. Let it only be for you, God. And let my highest pleasure, God, be in fellowshipping with you.